Colorado last month, there was a massive environmental disaster. 3 million gallons of polluted mine wastewater spilled into the Animas River in a matter of hours. It was the worst ecological catastrophe in the region in recent memory. The spill released a mustard-colored plume into the regional river system stretching some 80 miles long. We have a video that I'd like to show of what happened.
Get out of here. Huh? Get out of here.
Try that again. All right, when they fix that, we will come back to it. That is not the right video. So what caused the accident? What caused the accident? The Environmental Protection Agency. My colleagues and I often disagree on the merits of EPA's action. However, I'm certain that everyone in this room can agree that EPA should not be making the environment worse. We are here to examine how this disaster happened. We're also here to examine how it was managed. And most importantly, we're here to make sure it never ever happens again. The EPA must be held fully accountable for the accident. Last year, a private company in West Virginia accidentally released roughly 7,500 gallons of chemicals into the river. Remember, this spill was 3 million gallons. The EPA immediately began a criminal investigation. The EPA built a case against the company that resulted in a criminal indictments for 6 employees. The company was forced to declare bankruptcy. In 1999, a private company in Alaska inadvertently spilled 1,500 gallons of oil into a nearby river. The project manager of the site was sentenced to prison for 6 months. And yet I've heard the EPA administrator go on television saying, we hold our people to an even higher standard. I'm not aware of anybody who's been dismissed, held accountable, let alone given some criminal charges along the way. In the aftermath of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010, President Obama demanded that those responsible be held fully accountable. When asked if he would fire the CEO of the company responsible, President Obama said, quote, he wouldn't be working for me, end quote. Has anything happened to any of the EPA employees who were responsible for this? Not a thing. The EPA should not get special treatment or avoid the consequences they instituted on others. One of the more offensive things that I heard as I visited with the president of the Navajo Nation, who was deeply affected by this, is that days after this, we had EPA employees walking the banks of the river, not there to do a cleanup, not there to help with the cows and the cattle and other things, but they were out there handing out these waiver forms, trying to get a waiver form signed to limit the liability days after this happened. Many of these people don't even speak English, and yet you had employees of the federal government working for you out there trying to limit their liability. That is so fundamentally, totally wrong and offensive. Did the EPA call the Navajo Nation to let them know what was happening right away? No, it was 48 hours until you bothered to even make contact with the Navajo Nation. And then, when you offered support, 2 people came down, 2, to go sit in the control center, basically to spy and to see what was going on there. They weren't down there working hard to get this thing cleaned up, and we're going to hear from the president of the Navajo Nation. He's the one that told us about this and what's going on. You could shake your head no, but that's exactly what happened, and it's highly offensive. Hand out waiver forms. Try to limit the liability instead of taking care of what you knew was happening more than a year in advance. More than a year in advance. And that's what's so deeply concerning here. One other point that I'd like to make as we go along in this. In June of 2014, the EPA contracted with the Environmental Restoration, the company, to work the Gold King mine. In the contract, again, a year in advance, more than a year in advance, the contract says, quote, conditions may exist that could result in a blowout of the blockages and cause a release of large volumes of contaminated mine waters and sediment from inside the mine which contain concentrated heavy metals, end quote. They knew this was a distinct possibility. They knew that this was going to happen more than a year in advance, and yet obviously they did not take the necessary precautions to make sure that this did not happen. We want to have some answers to that and a host of other questions. We do appreciate you being here today. Look forward to a lively discussion.